I'm going to take us out of the equation. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is official CJ Live. Here we are on Wednesday evening at 6:30 p.m. and we are just giving God the glory because we have another opportunity to not only share some things that are pertinent to what he has to share in his word, but are pertinent to life in totality. And I'm excited because we have again as our guest on the show Giantis, my friend from San Diego, California, who has been just a wonderful mentor, wonderful friend, and just a wealth of knowledge and insight. This gentleman is going to virtually open your understanding in ways that he has for me for over 20 plus years. So I'm sure he is going to do the same for us all tonight, and I'm looking forward to it. I want to make sure that everybody, if you haven't, I want to make sure that you will have a chance to subscribe to Official CJ Jackson on YouTube. Visit our website at officialcjjackson.com and get a chance to see some of the things that we're doing throughout the community and now some of the things that we're doing worldwide. As I was just sharing with James, we're averaging on a regular basis, folks, at least one person coming to Christ every other day through just the simple avenues that God has put forward that we have taken advantage of, basically through social media. I'm having people call me and directly communicate with me about everything under the sun, but more importantly, about really wanting to have a relationship with Jesus. And you would say, that seems so unreal, but it's real. It's happening. And I want to be really transparent about that because there's some people that are really hungry and that are really looking and searching for the authenticity of Jesus Christ. They're not looking for something that's fake and something that looks like it's just a ritual. They want something that they can live and they can actually put into practice right now. So with that being said, tonight we're going to be focusing on boundaries and fear. And I have given James just full freedom to go in whatever direction he wants to go into. I'm going to stop him at times because I know he can get rolling, he can get going, and I'm going to kind of just make sure that certain things that we may need to have more finely tuned and more brought to a place where we can make more or greater application of it, or maybe greater understanding of something that may be shared that we may need more of. I'm going to ask him to come back on that. But our subject title is going to be Boundaries and Fear. Boundaries and fear. And believe it or not, folks, these two go hand in hand. And I'm sure James is going to go into that to some degree. He's going to elaborate on that. But we're going to really deal with that because there's a lot of stuff going on about boundaries. And there's a lot of stuff that people have shared, and even me. But James is going to go to another level, and I know he is, and I want you to be open. So right now, you need to get yourself some paper, get a notepad, get yourself a pen right now. Get yourself some information that you can write down because you want to take some notes and you want to have some things prepared that you can remember from this. Because listen, I've always been a firm believer. If you don't write it down, it's not going to be written on your heart. If you don't write it down, it's not going to have staying power in your mind. You got to write it down, okay? Otherwise, many things that we hear do not have the ability to have that glue where we want it to have in our hearts. So I encourage you to do that right now. And with that being said, no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to James and let James give you a little bit of a profile of himself, talk a little bit about his upcoming book, and how he plans on sharing that with the world. And ladies and gentlemen, James Giantis.
Thanks, Coyveld, for the introduction, all the kind words, and agree with everything you're stating here today. For those that are interested, we're about to get our first publication wrapped up. It's going to be about 500 pages. It's called the Mentors Training Manual. It's designed not just for mentors, but anybody that's in a position of leadership or influence of youth. I don't care, whatever age ranges. I think there's so much value in this. I've been in the mix for 30 plus years. I actually bequeathed my library of books to CJ many years past. I forgot about that until
you did.
Probably hundreds of books, whatever. But I was an avid reader for 10 years straight. I averaged 10 hours a pop each day, and then all that information distilled, and then all the things I've learned in the last 30 years of working with people. So there's tons of good information. Also, we just started on social media with Instagram, so it's Mentors and More. And mentorsandmore.com is our website. Enough of that stuff. I want to get into the mix. I get excited to talk about any topic that I think is going to be a benefit to folks. And I think when people think of boundaries, there's a lot of different definitions that folks have. And so I just want to share mine, and then you can do what you do with it. Boundaries to me is anything that is comprised of your mind, body, spirit, soul. And so all your intellectual property, all the messages, all of that is within your boundary, your identity. So if you think about all of your genetics, all the characteristics and traits that you've been given, your temperament, the natural capabilities or skill level, you go on down to all that stuff which you've been given, plus every single thing that's happened from day one of your life. And I include the womb in this. Every single moment, there's messages occurring. Direct, indirect, intentional, unintentional. The messages that we deem to be undesirable, threatening, or harmful do damage, like poison, like cancer. They're destructive. And so when you brought up the topic, this is you said boundaries and fear, so I'm going to run with it. I'm going to talk about always the positive and application and what you can do. I got homework assignments for folks down the road once we get into the mix a little bit more. But when it comes to our boundaries, unfortunately, we've been given we've been given messages, so many that have such destructive qualities to it. And it's a very unfair thing if you think about it. And some of you out there have been abused or neglected. We all have in some way, shape, or form. We've all had experiences of trauma. And all those messages that are stored up, if they're not metabolized properly, then you're holding on to them and they're dictating to you. Now, how often during the course of your day are you sending out messages, or are you receiving messages of, I love you, I like you, I care about you, I need you, you're of value, you're significant, you're important to me? All those positive messages, I'm going to make a strong presumption for a lot of folks out there, it's not a dominant aspect of your life.
Amen.
CJ, I appreciate you. You're always positive and encouraging. You got a way about you, and I love that for you. I like to surround myself with people like yourself, but I think it's not as accessible as people would like. There's a very strong need for people to be around people that are constructive, that are positive. And so going back to that boundary thing, if you're outside and you're in the range of, let's say, 100 people for 5 minutes, in that 5-minute segment, whether you're consciously processing it or not, you are receiving thousands and hundreds of thousands and maybe even up to millions of different micro messages. What people wear, what they're not wearing, what people say, facial expressions, body language. There's so many different ways that messages are conveyed. Here's a homework assignment. I strongly encourage anyone to do this. Generate a list and put on the left-hand column all the prominent or influential people that have had a negative impact in your life, and write down or type in what they said or did that caused you to be threatened to cause you to have a reaction of fear. This will give you a very good, you'll see very quickly there's certain themes. And when you see those themes, then it'll become much, much easier for you to be able to manage those. But I want to go back a step. When it comes to fear, and I think we talked about this last time, and I talk about fear a lot because fear is constantly going on. There's two main facets of fear. One is the fear of not getting something that you want or need. It's too lengthy to get into that want and need, but leave it at that. Or the fear of receiving or experiencing something that would be considered negative. That's it. So if you think about every single moment of every single day, your fears are in play. Fear is a beautiful gift. A wonderful, wonderful, wonderful gift until it isn't. When it's not a good gift, when it's not a blessing, when it's not something that's beneficial, is when your fears are unfounded, they're unrealistic, they're imagined. And that's far too often, far too many of us struggle with that. And so when it comes to something that we're feared, we used this last time, a snake. I'm not good with snakes. I'm not good with spiders. I'm not good with those creatures at all. Sharks, centipedes, anything. I'm not good with any of them. I'm afraid of them. I don't like them. When I'm afraid of them, anything, it's going to be three real main options, three natural things that occur. One, you're going to try to fight it, crush it. So I see a spider in the house. Sorry, people out there, forgive me, but if I see a spider in the house, first thing I say is you start counting down the last moments of your life because I'm not coexisting with it. I'm not picking it up. I'm not escorting it outside. I just don't do well with them. So to me, it's a threat. And I'm not the guy that will go and squash them. I'll spray them with something from far away. I'm that much of a chicken. I don't have a problem admitting that. I could try to avoid it. I could go move somewhere else. That'd be quite expensive and a lot of work. And that's what we tend to do. We either try to fight something or we try to flee for something. We try to avoid something. I'm telling you right now, when it comes to physically oriented things, never let someone strike you. That's a whole different category. But when it comes to messaging and our boundaries within our identity, we have to get better as a people to be able to learn to manage and metabolize and not be as so easily threatened by messages that have such destructive effects on us. So when I go back, you can fight something, you can flee from it, or you can get frozen or stuck by it. I want you to think about that. I want you to think about when your brother, your cousin, your spouse, your sibling, whatever it is, when they say or do something that you find threatening, are you getting stuck and trapped by it and frozen? Is it owning and dictating to you? Do you try to fight back at it? Or do you try to avoid it, or all of the above? You could do all three on the same moment. And so when it comes to those kind of things, like, you got to stop and think, like, what are those messages that people are sending directly or indirectly, verbally, non-verbally, intentionally or unintentionally, that I find threatening? For me, let me say one thing real quick, Koivel.
Please.
I can't stand being falsely accused. That's a message that's a big time threat for me. Being misconstrued, misperceived, those kind of things, false presumptions, false assumptions. I do not like that. Those are threatening messages to me. Go ahead. I'll come back to that.
You brought up something, and I'm a very transparent and authentic guy. So, as of late, there's been a movement because I have been speaking relatively a lot about truth. And there has been a great deal of people that have virtually, I thought, were, on the same level of where I was. And when I exposed the truth, they backed away from me. And because of me being who I am and having, the sense of, accountability, the sense of finding out where I am in relationships, what's going on, all these red flags that I'm seeing, I'm not going to just walk around like I don't see that there's a difference. I recognize there's a difference. And so me being proactive, because that's what I do, I go to them and I say, what's up? What's going on? Why are we not like we were? What's the deal? And when I hear from them that virtually they feel like they're in a very tough spot and they don't know where to play because of where I'm at, and they don't want to actually, operate here because it could cause further damage with what they're connected with or who they're connected with. So virtually, I have to make a decision for them. I say, look, if this is going to put you in an uncomfortable situation to roll with me because of where you are, then let me make the decision for you. Okay. I don't want you to be uncomfortable. I don't want you to be uncomfortable with me. I want you to be in a place that gives you comfort. I don't want you to feel that if you hang out with CJ, it's going to jeopardize something over here that you've stabilized in. Don't do it. Don't do it. I don't want you to. I want you to do what's going to be comfortable for you. Now, I've given them a way out. Okay. I've given them a way out because certain people don't really know how. And one of the other things that I think you may need to elaborate on to some degree is that manipulation can be very deceptive, and people don't know that they're being taken advantage of. They're being used. They're being misused. They're being brought into something that I believe that if you're not careful, you can be taking on somebody else's responsibilities, and you can be in a place where you don't know it, but you're pleasing people because you feel as if you don't, you're going to lose the relationship you're in with that person. You're doing all these kinds of things that virtually you feel if you don't, you might lose something. So you continue to keep doing it. And I think there's a lot of people here. I really do. I think there's a lot of people that are in the church here, and virtually they're in ministry because if they don't, they're going to be looked at bad. If I step down or if I tell them that I got a problem and I got some issues I have to address, they're going to look at me differently. And we don't have the audacity and the boldness and the confidence. And I think one of the things that I want you to help the audience with, that I know that's listening tonight, is how do we establish that? Because I think a lot of people are dealing with relationships where there's a lot of manipulation, whether it's in their marriage, whether it's in their church, whether it's on their job, whether it's even with friends, sometimes even with our siblings, and sometimes even with our children. We're dealing with them taking advantage of us. Every time we turn around, they want rent for the house. They want somebody to bail them out of jail. Come on, somebody. They want all this stuff. And where do we say no? Because that's my son, that's my brother, that's my mom. Where do we come to that point? So I gave you a lot, but
you literally just opened up every can of worms. Honestly, like it's going to be, and I don't know how much time we have, but there's no way I'm going to be able to address all of those in full. But those are the real things that people are dealing with all day long, every day. And so let me address some of this. And some of this, I'm going to ask you to prepare yourself, and maybe you get your notebook and your pen out as well, because I want to give you some feedback and maybe even some correction. So number one, manipulation, it goes back to that fear thing. The manipulation, anytime someone's being manipulative, it's manipulative to get something or to avoid something. It's that simple. So in relationships, unfortunately, we tend to use one another for things that we get: affirmation, approval, acceptance, fun, play, recognition, go on down the list. Tangible stuff. The tangible stuff, unfortunately, we don't really need much. We don't need anywhere near the volume of stuff that we have. We really don't. And we've gotten very, very far away of seeing the value, the incredible value of relationship and honesty and genuineness and etc. So going back to the manipulative thing, that's an unfortunate thing, because basically what you're saying, this is my tactic, this is my way of operating to try to get what I want and or to avoid what I don't want. That's sad. Because going back to what you said initially, and this is where I want to challenge you a little bit, is that you say truth. I may agree with you 100%. I may agree with you 40%, 20%, 0%. We all have the right to be able to choose to think, to believe what we deem to be truthful or false. honesty or lies, good or bad, healthy or unhealthy. We all have that option. And this is the part that gets real dicey, real quick in relationship. When we expect someone else to have the same beliefs and share the same values and agree on certain things, and they don't, the fear in a relationship is that, wait a minute, you don't see eye to eye on this topic with me? We're looking at the very same thing and you have a diametrically opposed perspective on it. I can't trust you. I can't connect with you and stay true in that relationship because I'm fearful that you're not similar. We don't have the same values, and the fear is being rejected, disapproved, and so it's very difficult for us. You have to take a lot of effort, energy, and investment in order to love someone for where they are. And it's not saying that you're ahead of them. It's not saying that you're better than them. To love someone, to appreciate, to value them, despite having differing views. Now, what I'm saying, probably a bunch of people, if they heard that, are going to get mad. And I said this, I think last time, I'm going to say this all the time. You watch any one video on the internet, you read through the comments, you will find almost always there is a 50-50 split on perspective about what someone just saw. And so if you think about that volume of numbers, you think about our election process recently, if those numbers are factual, it was pretty darn close to 50-50 in the last. What does that tell you? If half of the country, if half of the world sees something one way and the other half sees it a different way, and then that means basically half versus half. Any conflict, any drama between people, each party believes they're justified in their position, that the other one is wrong. The other one is bad. The other one is not seeing the truth accurately. And so,
let me step in for a second, because I've had to grow in this area in my walk with God. And when I mean truth, I mean personal enlightenment to me, and not to anybody else. And because I've been enlightened and I'm at a place where I recognize what's been exposed in my own life, that people are uncomfortable. And I don't want them to be uncomfortable. I want them to be comfortable, but I can't make them comfortable.
You can't. I'll stop you right there, because that's the bottom line. We all have varying levels, and I want to make sure I'm clear on these three things. Things that we don't like, things that we deem threatening, or things that we're deemed harmful. We have a right to all of that, and there's so many variables, so many factors, so much messaging that leads us to have those things. Not everyone is motivated to be at their optimal best or put the work in to be able to do it, and do your homework and write this stuff down and say, you know what? No longer am I going to be, people could say, judge me all day long and say, you're imperfect, you're wrong, you're bad, you're ugly, we are way too sensitive. If someone has a negative perspective of us, so be it. You're not going to be able to control them. You shouldn't have to try to run through hoops to try to prove that you're something that you're not. We
Amen.
should all accept our frailties, our negative aspects, our limitations, our weakness. And here's the big discerning factor, though. You people can run around all day long and say, my truth, my truth, my truth. Everybody says that. We're in trouble. There has to be some kind of standard for how we think, say, and do that everyone agrees upon. That's not the case anymore. And it's disintegrating more and more rapidly by the day. But here's the greater point. I don't care. I don't have a hard time with people believing what they believe or valuing what they value. What I have a hard time, and I don't care what demographic, or I don't care what circumstance, the moment that you say or do something that's aggressive and put someone else in a compromising situation, that they're at a disadvantage, then that's when the problem should occur for all of us. So, Amen. Going back to your point, and I'm sure a lot of people in the same scenarios, sometimes you need to draw the line and say, for the betterment of that person and yourself in the relationship, you know what, it's not working at this point. Maybe we can revisit it down the road. Amen. But so much mercy and forgiveness and empathy are significant factors that if you are able to apply those, it changes the game of relationships big time. And sometimes you just have to, it's not taking a higher road because you're not better than somebody, in my opinion. Sometimes you just have to do the right thing and keep doing the right thing and don't want anything in return.
Amen.
And if
That's
you take
unconditional love.
that, because that's exactly right, because then it becomes conditional and it's not love. So you're not being loving of yourself. So like, who are you to say anything?
Right.
We should all be much more loving to ourselves and to each other. Easier said than done. Easier said than done. It takes a lot of work. It's not easy. And if you had all the proper information and knew exactly what to do in every scenario, it doesn't matter. It is very, very difficult. We are not perfect beings. We're never going to be perfect here. And that's just something we all need to accept. There is such a lack of mercy. It's so difficult to empathize with somebody, period. It's difficult to empathize with somebody who has a weakness or a struggle or a difficulty. And it is significantly more difficult to empathize with someone that we deem to be resistant or rebellious, who is selfish, irresponsible, wrong, does destructive things. It's extremely difficult to try to empathize or understand. And I think you got me going. I'm a little fired up right now, so I don't want to get too far off of the topic of the day, but I hope the message is clear to people that we all need to strive to love one another as best as possible. I'm not saying let somebody abuse you and abuse you and abuse you. I'm not saying anything along those lines, but I am saying that there needs to be some mercy and some understanding and some compassion for our own imperfections and those of the people around us. And, so saying to the people that you're talking about, Koivel, I would want those people to get stronger about those messages and really object. And here's the big word: objectively, reasonably, critically think and ascertain without having a bias or subjectivity. That's very difficult. Let me one more thing. Unfortunately, when we're evaluating a message or a person or a behavior or an aspect of life, we can either be objective and then therefore accurate, reasonable, and we don't have skin in the game. We don't have an investment in a particular outcome. We tend to be very subjective or biased because we prefer to believe something to be true, because then therefore we get some kind of derivative, some kind of benefit. Typically it's a physiological gratification, but also it's that need fulfillment. So for these people, or any of us, myself included, when we hear messages or experience messaging that we find threatening or stuff that we don't like or it hurts us, we have a hard time with that. But we should all take that as an opportunity to evaluate and go, okay, what is it about this message that is so harmful? And you said you don't want people to be uncomfortable around you. That is life. It's okay to be uncomfortable. It's what you do with that discomfort is what makes or breaks how you do it internally and then how within your relationship. I'm talking fast, furious. Sorry.
Well, I want to use myself as an example because I think it's going to be pertinent to people. These were profound relationships that I had with people, to where virtually these are folks that, hung out with me like this. And now that has completely changed with no signals whatsoever, no kind of, messages, just boom, gone. The only thing that has changed has been me. I've changed. And because I have changed and been more in line with what I believe God is really revealing in my life and showing me and being able to go in that direction where God is leading me and not the conventional route, which is primarily the way that they would want me to, they've pulled away from me. And so now I realize that, but because of the person I am and the relationship that I had with these people, I'm not going to operate like nothing really happened. Let me go on about life. No, I'm going to be proactive and I'm going to say, hey, man, come here. Can we talk? Let's wrap for a second. What's going on? What's happening? And get to the meat and the potatoes if we possibly can. And I mean, this is not just one or two people. This is a lot. And so when I realized that virtually it's a place that they're uncomfortable, and I realized it, my critical thinking stepped in and the Spirit of God stepped in and showed me with discernment that this is really something that they're uncomfortable with. Okay, I'm not going to continue to put them in an uncomfortable position because I don't like being uncomfortable. But you know what, though? I am not going to hold myself responsible for their uncomfortability. I'm going to take a position that says, hey, look, guys, I want to help if I can. And I'm going to do some things that virtually I need to do. And then I'm going to assess where I stand. And so I say that because I believe that it's important. I think and believe the way God's wired me. I don't expect anybody to believe the way that God's wired me. I expect them to move and operate as the Bible talks about individually. We're all individuals in the body of Christ, and we make up the body, and the body has many members, but all the members of that body are not the same. So that means there is individuality in everybody. The problem is a lot of people are struggling with their own individuality. But they don't know how to operate with other people doing something that's different than how they're doing it, and they struggle.
Well, yeah, yes, and I know that you know, but this is the thing that I'm saying to you all day long. In your position with the knowledge and the wisdom that you do have, and the self-control that you have over your management of yourself and your messaging to people, you're incredibly tactful and graceful when you choose to be. I'm going to challenge you all day long to say, play the long game, play the slow game. Love people, period. And if you're pulling away and you're doing different things, and you believe that when you bring God into things, some people don't even believe there's God. There's a lot of people out there.
Amen.
A lot of people have a very different vision of what a God is. A lot of people don't want, Christianity in particular, a huge knock, and that makes sense. People don't want to accept that I need a Lord to tell me what to do and not to do. I need a Savior because I'm that pathetic or that desperate, or I'm that much in need. That's extremely threatening stuff. So you can't expect people, they may have been accustomed to you being a certain kind of way for many, many years, decades, whatever. And then if you're starting to make moves in a different direction, in a different way, that is threatening. People like the familiar and the predictable because they're accustomed to it. It's safe, it's stable, it provides security. When you step out of that range, that sense of control dissipates remarkably for folks.
That's a good point.
I think you got to be cognizant of that. And then as you're relating to folks, don't look at it from, what can I get out of this? I'm in the same boat with a very, very close friend. I invested a lot in a relationship, and I don't hear from that dude. And I got none but love, and he never did anything wrong, but we don't spend time. I'm not a valuable person. I know he's super busy, but you got 365 days in a year. You got 100 waking hours in a week. You're not prioritizing it, so therefore I don't care. No excuses. And so that doesn't feel good. And, my natural inclination is to fight, flee, or to freeze. And I've done all three. And it's like I got to wrestle with it. And then I got to choose to say, okay, and here's the answer, faith. And I think I talked about that last time. In order to have faith, you have to have courage. In order to have courage, that means you got to be willing to take the next step in the right direction. But you can't have faith and lack skill. You can't walk into a lion's den and just because you have a whole bunch of courage and you have a whole bunch of faith, and you step right up in there and everything's going to be fine. You got to have skill. You got to have that Siegfried and Roy type of skill. And so it's and even then with faith should, if you're operating with a faith, and it's also, what do you have faith in? Is it faith in you? Is it faith in your skills? Is it faith in a God? Is it faith in another deity? Is it faith in somebody else? Is it faith in your money? Is it faith in whatever? And then not only that, but true faith is having that courage, walking, being willing and capable of accepting whatever the outcome is, and not trying to fight it, not trying to avoid it, and not trying to get stuck by it. It boils down to the same thing. It's all right there for you, but it takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of strength, and it takes a lot of time and effort to be able to summon up. Faith is a skill that you got to keep repping out, and it's not always easy and fun, and there's lots of knocks on it. So going back to you, and then I'll gladly move on. But you talk about boundaries and fear. You're talking about boundaries and fear. This is a you thing, which is an us thing. We're all in the same boat in different ways. And so none of us, like I said before, I don't think anyone's better than another. But we might be better than another when it comes to certain skills. And I'm challenging you. This is your challenge for you. Is I want you to stop and think about all those people and try to put yourself as best as possible in their position and stop and think, okay, there's a reason why they either don't like it, they're threatened by it, or they're harmed by it. And then what can I do to get myself so that they could still, that's their right, that's their option. But what can I do to try to mitigate or minimize or even eliminate that potential by what I'm doing? When you take a stance of, okay, all right, I'm going to do it for you, keep it open. Keep the gray area, which is uncomfortable. That's a good faith developer for you. The same thing with me when I'm talking about my buddy. But my mind, and I got to wrestle with it every single time it pops into my head. Like, I just want to write this dude off. I don't want to have nothing to do with him for moving on. That's it. It's over.
I don't. I still leave messages with all of them, encouraging messages. I still stay in contact with them. I never receive anything that never returns back to me. But I still do that because that's where I am now. And these are people that I heavily invested in. And I did a lot in terms of, their foundation, their growth, their maturity, their enlightenment. I did a lot for, and for this to take place, it's unusual, but at the same time, you got to understand, everybody has what I call a walkabout at some point in time. I had a walkabout for 5 years. I was sick, 2 times cancer, 1 time a rare blood disorder. All 3 times I was told I was going to die by doctors, but I kept hearing something else that said my time is not over. You can call it whatever you want, but I'm calling it that it was strictly a message from God, that you're not leaving. I need you to do something before you leave the planet. I am only getting you to see that your faith is going to get developed through this period of time. And man, did it ever. My faith got developed. I had to be completely vulnerable. I had to be naked. I had to be at a place where virtually I had no control over nothing. I had no control over my body, no control over anything that was going on. I was weak. I was wounded. I was out of it. I was bleeding out of every orifice in my body. I lost so much. And even right now, they don't understand, James, why organs that they say are failing, but virtually it's like my body is getting renewed. They thought I should be dead, and my organs are actually renewing themselves right now. My kidney, my bladder, man, I can go on and on and on. That even my blood issues, that they're all that stuff is leaving now, and they don't understand why. And I understand, and it goes back to this message again, that I was being called to do something, just like I believe you are, whether you want to hear it from me or not. You're being called to do something, and I was called to do something. And sometimes that's a place where relationships are going to change.
Yes. But what you're saying, that the content you might just do because you live it and you have lived it, and that's intense stuff. And in some ways, that restoration and rejuvenation and healing. And these are all threatening things. That the second half of it, but it's very threatening when people are struggling mightily or near death. It's not something that
That's a good point. That's a good point. That's a good point, James. That's a good point.
That's the thing I'm trying to advocate for you. I say this to anybody, and it's not easy. I'm not saying any of this is easy, but I'm also going to challenge you one more time about something like never give to get. And I'm not saying that that's what you did. I'm just saying when you invest in someone that and you're pouring into effort, time, and you're giving love, but you give love and you don't expect no ROI. The ROI is what knowing that you are doing the right thing by somebody. Loving someone is not giving them what they want. Loving someone is giving them exactly what they need in the proper measure. And so, I'm hoping that, anyone that's listening to this, live or down the road or way down the road or whatever else, like stop and really think about it and go, okay, where can I, because here's the thing about fear and here's something about faith. We can tolerate, we're pretty tough humans. in so many ways. And we're extremely tough when it comes to messaging if we only prioritize dealing with what's in front of us and not getting distracted and part of the reason why people do this, they keep themselves distracted with a bunch of different things to give them a built-in excuse or justification for not dealing with something in particular.
Amen.
We get ourselves so busy with so many different things and going from one relationship to another or whatever. We go to where it's easiest, simplest, and most comfortable. And so what you're talking about, super threatening stuff that it's not only the content of what you're saying, but if you don't have a semblance of understanding because you haven't been through something similar, good luck. That becomes very, very difficult for people to understand. I was in 3 7-year periods of chronic pain, morning, noon, and night, morning, noon, and night, morning, noon, and night. And I didn't see a way out of any of them. And I didn't want any of them. Super humbling, slow you down big time. And, I got to be grateful for it because for some way, shape, or form, I think it's been a benefit. I'd rather be able to do A, B, C, D, and E. And I wasn't able to. And it stinks. And you look at it, did I have something to do with it or not? I don't know. There's a lot of variables there. But the bottom line is if we stop and honor where we're at and try to get as comfortable and content and as much peace and as much joy and freedom, and then not expect the more that we expect less from folks, the better off we're all going to be because we all are so imperfect. We all got to rest. We all got weaknesses. We got our own injuries. We got things that we're threatened by. Relationships are difficult. And my advocacy is, go to those people where you can get what you need to get filled up. And then when you're filled up, then you got to turn around and do the same for others. And I think if we all operated that way, but here's the problem. And CJ, I don't know your audience, but I would presume that there's a lot of people out there really struggling. And it's like, gosh, where's my love? Where do I get empathy from? Where is someone that stops and listens to me and spends the time? Someone that looks at me the moment that I see them and then they smile and there's joy in their heart. Like, thank you. I thank you that I get to see you again and spend time with you. And, life is rough. It can look very, very, very unfair. And, we can all choose to have a good attitude about it and have a proper mindset, or we can try to fight, avoid, or get stuck by it. And that's a decision that people have to make for themselves. For me, as much as possible, and I'm not the best at it all the time, I got my areas of weakness as well. But as much as possible, I want to enjoy what I'm doing. So, I watched this, I think it was a documentary, or maybe it was a movie or something, but these kids in Brazil would get up. I'm presuming, I haven't been to Brazil, but it looks pretty darn hot and humid. And they got, so all right, thank you for confirming that. And they're wearing flip-flops, a pair of shorts, and a tank top, and they got a little transistor radio thing, and they're going through the piles on the junkyard, the garbage. I can only imagine how bad that stuff. I would be throwing up left and right. I would weigh next to nothing after one day. And they're doing it with joy in their heart, having a good time singing and playing, looking for treasure in the midst of that, looking for food items that they could take home for their family, stuff that they can eat, and looking for stuff that they can sell or something they can put in wherever they reside. Think about that perspective.
Yes.
And we're complaining when we don't have this. Now, I'm not talking about just that 10. We need food. We need things. But unfortunately, all too often, and I hate this, I hate it. I wish I could do more, but people need love.
Yes.
And here's the thing, when you start loving somebody that's not accustomed to it, it becomes like, wait a minute, this is available, this is accessible, then they want more and more and more. And we're not able to moderate ourselves too well and balance it out. And that's why, I think in one way, shape, or form, all of us are called to be loving to ourselves and to each other. And the more people that are failing to do that, the more that other people have to try to pick up the slack. There's just a lack of love. And I didn't want to, I'll get into whatever we get into, but when it comes to boundaries and fear, just to circle back, in all of our boundaries, unfortunately, there's way too much it's stuff that's adherent to our souls and to our, it's just negative, it's destructive, and it causes all kinds of problems. And so, in your world and a lot of people's world, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to go and you're supposed to admit, confess truly, genuinely all of your wrongs, and then ask for forgiveness, and then also ask and then forgive others. Excuse me, oh, my bad. The first step is to forgive others. My bad. Then that means, and I like the way that order is because it makes sense. It's
Yes,
not, yeah. So you forgive others first, then you confess, admit, and then all that. But here's the thing about forgiveness and confession and all that stuff. Trying to make amends is extremely difficult. You can't clean up a mess or rectify or bring something back into order that's already out of order. The minute I call you a name, it's over. That damage is done. But you got to metabolize. That's your choice. You can fight it. You can run from it. You can get stuck by it, or you can choose. And that's why I think the Bible says forgive 70 times 7 or something along those lines.
Exactly.
Okay? Start doing that math, that gets into a lot. And that's the wrestle. That's the struggle. That takes energy. And then to me, it's, talking about the stuff that we're talking about, you got to set a game plan. I'm not listening to anybody that's a habitual line stepper and keeps, all right, and then apologizes. I'm saying back to you, write this out. What are the steps that you're going to take to do one of two things? Either one, avoid doing what you're doing, so you know exactly what to do. It's usually on a Tuesday at lunch that you end up saying the same thing over and over again. So have a game plan for what you can say instead and do instead. And or that once you do something mess up, which we're all going to mess up multiple times, is that, okay, how do I get this? How do I clean this mess up as soon as possible? But our pride gets in the way. Our envy gets in the way. Our strong desire for stuff. Our strong desire for stuff that we don't have. For, our laziness. You go on down, our gluttony, all that stuff are major detractors from us, responsible living. CJ, I don't know where you're at, but I just saw a pretty large bird type species fly across your head. Is everything all right over there?
Yeah, it's a pelican, man.
Okay, that thing was huge.
Yeah. That's a pelican.
That kicks in my fear for you.
Yeah, we got a bunch of them around the house. Hey, there's a couple comments that people are making, and so I want to kind of see if we can pause for a
Somebody's
second.
mad? Is somebody mad at us? Somebody mad at me?
Oh no, they just made some comments that I think are really essential to where we're going. I think there needs to be maybe a little bit more elaboration on your part about sharing. What does the fight and the flight and the frozen look like? What does that look like?
Okay, that's a great question, and we don't take enough time. I got a story related to pelicans. This is something that was fascinating to me. I saw it on television. Actually, it was here in San Diego. It was filmed. They filmed I want to say it was like a 3-minute segment on a show called North America, which went through like the animal kingdom and different stuff like that. And it was fascinating. I love that kind of stuff. They showed a group of pelicans. There's probably a name for them. I think there's like 5, 6 of them. They're going in their formation like they do. All of a sudden, the whole thing's about a peregrine falcon. I never even heard of a peregrine falcon. This is overhead the La Jolla Cliffs. You've been there.
Yes.
And so the peregrine falcon is the fastest species. You asked me, I would have said cheetah, but I didn't know about the peregrine falcon. Peregrine falcon, they kick it into gear on their own 200 miles per hour. With a wind, 240. That's fast. Peregrine falcon is a little itty bitty thing. Pelican's huge. It just went by your head. You should be scared. That thing is enormous. Probably take your roof off. So the pelicans are there. The peregrine falcon has young up in the cliffs. Peregrine falcon looks at this as a threat. So what the peregrine falcon chooses to do, instead of going home, grabbing the young and taking them and moving somewhere else, which would be to avoid, or avoid is to try, I didn't see that, or minimize, oh, there's no big deal, or they're not a threat. That's what that looks like. That chose to go fight, and it took one down after another, and the pelicans, big, huge pelicans, went crashing down to the ocean. This is what gets a little even dicier. This is a small segment into the day of the animal kingdom. Does that, removes all those threats, and then boom, a huge snake was slithering up trying to eat its young simultaneously, grabs the snake. Yes, boom, like, you gotta be kidding me. I'm not leaving the house. I can't leave my kids if that's the way it's going to be every day. Like, this is ridiculous. But going back to all joking aside, like, when it comes to being stuck means that you're you're allowing a message that somebody sent or something that you did or a message that you sent, you're allowing it just to stay there and stay there. That's what's stuck, trapped, frozen, oppressed, stuck, getting in a pit. And we are all there in some way, shape, or form. Fighting is, the moment someone says something that you don't like, that you're afraid of, then you snap back at them. Or you're preemptive and you get ahead of stuff and you say stuff. You're always trying to keep at war to keep away from being threatened or being harmed. And that's, fighting looks like a lot of different things. You can use denial, which is rejecting that this is true. You can minimize, you can rationalize, you can justify, you can project on other people. You can do a lot of different things. That's fighting as well. It's still avoiding, but it's also fighting. And then avoiding is trying to distract yourself by keeping busy and not trying to deal with something. So, I think it's biblical also that I think it's something along the lines that before you lay your head to rest, you should have reconciliation of all your anything that's out of order. So all the forgivenesses and all that kind of. Now that's good luck with that when you have a long history of people being abusive to you or treating you wrong or a long history of you messing up. Good luck. It takes a lot of work to get to that point till you clean your slate. But that's what we should be doing on a moment-to-moment basis. We should be able to, when something comes in that's threatening to us, metabolize it all and get it out of our system.
That's why the Bible talks about that. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And the Bible says that the outward man perisheth, but the inward man is renewed day by day. So there's an operation, there's an exercise, there's an expectation that we are to encompass in our lives that literally shows that we're operating. When the Bible talks about daily bread, it's not talking about physical bread. It's talking about the word of God is actually being incorporated in your life. It is a substance that virtually you're taking in and incorporating in your life so you can have wisdom, you can have insight, you can have understanding, you can have discernment, you can move and you can grow. And the Bible says faith comes by hearing the word of God. Even faith in and of itself comes by the incorporation of the living word. The word in and of itself, that's one form of faith. There's all kinds of faith, but for the faith that I'm alluding to the faith that I have from God is from his word. Now, with that being said, the same things that you just brought up, most of the people that are online, we got a bunch of folks that are online right now. Most of the people that are online have dealt with being stuck, being frozen. Okay. And I want you to illustrate how that virtually we can go from frozen to fight to flight. We can go from
to me, it's like water. It can come in 3 forms. It comes in ice, water, or gas. So it's 3 main forms, and just like aggression, passive aggression, or aggression, it's 3 forms, but it's all the same thing. And I don't want to get too far away from what you're saying, but so you invariably you can't have one without the other. If you're stuck, you're fighting it and you're trying to avoid it. If you're fighting it, you're trying to avoid it and you're stuck. So they're all synonymous. It's just different forms. But ultimately, here's the measurement device. The measurement is you do an assessment right present in the moment. For my time, it's 5:25 on May 25th, 2022. What am I uncomfortable about? What's causing me stress? What's causing me anger? What's causing me grief? What's causing me fear? And what's causing me guilt? That's it. Those 5. And all those will whittle down to grief, which goes back to the fear thing, that we're afraid we're not going to get something we need or want. That's grief, loss. We're afraid that we're going to get something negative. That's grief, that's loss. Everything that we do in life is to try to avoid loss. We want to be fulfilled. We need to be fulfilled. We're designed to be fulfilled. And unfortunately, when we get filled up with all these garbage, junk food messages, this negativity, this threats, and that adheres to your soul, then you're stuck by it. And so the more uncomfortable you are, the more addictive or compulsive you are, the more projective or displacing you are onto other people, those are telltale signs that you're holding on. You know, I've been hearing the saying lately, something like hurt people hurt people. I kind of like that. I think we're all hurt people. We're all hurting. We all hurt people. I know some people. I'm absolutely blessed with a circle of people in my life that they don't. It's incredible. They're angels compared to myself. Like I try to be good and I try to be kind and sweet, but I have a way sometimes of saying things that people don't necessarily like. I got a temper at times. I try to keep it so I don't attack anybody, but sometimes indirectly, I'm not perfect, but I got a lot of people around me that are pretty awesome, and they're special humans, and they're just kind.
Let me chime in here because for the listeners and viewers, I've known James for plus 20 years, and James has always been James, and that's one thing I can say. He has always been real, and one of the reasons that I emulate. If you spend enough time around James, you're going to say, man, that's a lot like CJ, because James was my mentor for a long time and still is to some degree. We haven't spent as much time as we typically have in the past. But I think one of the things that we can gain from him just making those comments, that here he is around all these people that he has seen as people that are real kind, consistently gentle, pure, and all of this. And then he recognizes where he's at. Folks, that's called authenticity. Okay. That's why I love the man, because he's able to be real about himself, real about whatever he's challenged by, whatever he's dealing with, whatever he's up against, whatever. Back in the day, we used to have long conversations about some of the relationships that he was having. And I remember they used to last for at least 3 or 4 hours. But literally,
the relationships or the conversations are both.
Both.
No.
But the point I'm making is that is what is so important about being real. And the reason why I'm drawn back to that is about, for anybody that's stuck, if you're stuck,
yes,
and you realize it, all you have to do is take a real assessment of why I am stuck and how did I get here. Take ownership of being stuck.
Yeah, first of all, I'm not a big fan on taking anything, because that to me is a little aggressive. Accept ownership. I get behind that all day. But that here you're talking about, this is layered. This is a 12-hour video to really cover all the bases and be more specific. But going back to that ownership thing, it is very, very threatening for us to accept ownership of our selfishness, our wrong, our negativity, our threats. I said something yesterday. I just truth be told, and I don't have a problem. I'm not going to say what I said, but online I play chess every day, too much, and I have a penchant for losing. And my rating would be considered good against a lot of different people, but there's tons of people that destroy me. There's people that beat me all over the world, one after another. There's people that don't say boo. They don't talk any smack, but you can tell by the way they play, they're very aggressive. It's a thing where you get dominated, and I don't like being dominated, to be honest, at all. I like to fight back, and I have my moments. I get revved up, and I end up saying things that I don't like saying. And yesterday I said something that I don't even say in real life. Like, I can't believe I said it. And it's like, I'm disgusted with it. And I try, like I said, I try to go to bed without having a clean slate. I'm up at 3 o'clock in the morning going, dang, I shouldn't have said that. I that's wrong. That's bad. Like, I don't know if I'll ever see the person again, but I need to apologize. I don't care how justified I think I was. Like, I fought accepting ownership of losing, of getting dominated and getting beat over and over again, and all the guilt and the fear and the stress and the anger and the grief. If I'm going to be real about it and do it the right way, I should just cry. Honestly. But who wants to do that? I should cry about how pathetic I can be at chess at times. And I'll tell anybody out there, don't play me because I'm a loose cannon. I might say something. No, I'm just playing. I can keep it together if I've set my mindset, but when I get lazy and I get distracted or I get doing too many different things and I don't prioritize the right amount of investment in my mindset, I'm prone to messing up. And I messed up yesterday and I'm disgusted in myself. Now, I'm going to say one more thing and then I'll go as long as you need me to go. But when I was young, I'd have breakups. And during the breakups was when I usually would be hungry. Like, all right, I did A, B, C, D, and E. I'm doing this the right way, I think. And then why am I ended up with the same outcome that I don't like? And then I would go and read. So I'm motivated. I'm hungry. I want to learn. I want to get better. I want better. I want a better outcome. So I'd read, and as I'm reading, I'd be like reading that thing. Yup, that's exactly what she did. Yup. And then it'd be like very shortly thereafter. Yup. And that's the reason why she did what she did. And then I would be, yup. And then a small voice, James, stop focusing on her and what she did and focusing on what? No, it's her. She did. And I remember doing this revolutions multiple times. And then I got to the point where you're like, you know what? I'm going to do this. Here, do this for homework. Good luck with this. This is Mission Impossible 7 or 8, wherever we're at. You say to yourself, when it comes to anything that you see anybody else doing, I have done it, I do it, or I could do it. I have done it, I do it, or I could do it. How humbling is that? Talk about humbling. If you go from that framework, then you don't have a right to judge anybody else because you don't know. Amen. You don't know what it's like to live someone else's life. You don't know what they're loaded with genetically. If you believe in the spiritual realm, which is invisible by its nature, Amen. If you believe in that, good luck. Good luck ascertaining all the different things that people go through during the course of a lifetime. When you're abused and neglected and traumatized at any point in your life, but especially when you're young, you cannot put words to it. You cannot understand it. It does so much damage. That's why we have to be so protective and nurture. And unfortunately, we live in a very threatening world with lots of destruction. If it's not physical stuff, the internet alone is strewn with so much stuff that is threatening. Yes, that does lots and lots of damage. We are walking around with lots and lots of damage, and we don't want to open up the hood of the car and look underneath and go, whoa, this isn't as a pristine engine as I like. And a lot of us already know that. So being humble, doing a self-assessment, getting around people that you know, and here's another thing. This is a big variable. You know, quite often people go to seek counsel or therapy or whatever else. And, you know, what are the motives of the people? What is the skill level of them? Are they truly thinking about the best interest of you? Can they customize messages back to you that are truly necessary for you? And I think that gets real dicey real quick. And that's why you got to have whoever you're going to put your trust or faith in to guide you through things or to absorb your stuff or your confession or your frailties or imperfections. Like, it's a dicey thing. People, I'll tell you right now, you can do this, but there's going to be people that are going to be like this. Oh, he doesn't like this or she doesn't like this. They're taking notes because they're going to turn around and use that. They're going to bring that into the present moment. Yes. That's an unfair, dirty tactic, but I mean, you know, I'm not telling anybody anything new. This is reality.
Amen. I wanted to just share real quickly. Our time is coming to a point where we're going to have to end at some point. Two things. One, I want you to share on how do we get to a point where, for instance, right now in the news, you know, we can't help but not pay attention to what's going on worldwide right now. There's massive violence happening everywhere. Just yesterday, we saw what took place in Texas with 21 people, I guess right now, have been killed by an 18-year-old boy who walked in and just, you know, brutally murdered children. And the graphics are, you know, I can't even, and I've gone through a whole lot in my life, but I can't even put my thoughts into, you know, what those parents are going through and how they're dealing with all of that. And then, on the other end, I'm sitting here saying, what was that boy going through? Because for him to do that, he had to be going through something. And I was in the grocery store today, and an older white man walked up to me, and he said, jokingly, he said, "You're not going to school today, are you?" And I said, "Huh?" He said, "You're not going to school because if you go to school, you might get shot." And I just kind of looked at him, me and my wife, and he said, "The problem with Texas is, they just let too many people grow up with guns in the cradle." And I just kind of walked in the store and didn't even chime into it. But the point that I'm looking at more than the gun is the fact that it was this young man who virtually had a move to do what was really, 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 really something that is bizarre and outside of any kind of understanding that I can come up with. And I think what I really want to share, because I think more and more these things are happening. It happened in California with the old man going to the church. We saw what happened in Buffalo. We're seeing more and more and more of this. And I'm seeing that the media is kind of showing us that, we need to do some things that virtually are different. And then even today, somebody had said something on the media that said we need to get away from the fact that we're dealing. This is about wrong and right, but this is about somebody who really needs some help. And I said to myself, yeah, he does. He did need some help, and obviously, nobody didn't see the signs. Or maybe they did and they weren't willing to do anything about the signs.
Yeah, this is you, Coyvel, golly today. Golly. You set me up for a lot of stuff. I can't keep my mouth closed on a lot of this stuff. And this is very controversial stuff. I'm gonna say my piece while we're here. Number one, we're working on about 150 days into 2022, and there's already been well over 200 mass shootings, and it's not always on the news. But it goes back to exactly what I was saying earlier. First of all, we need to train ourselves, and we need to train as best as possible, all of us, to not be saying things that are harmful to other people. Amen. And we have to get good at, and it's so unpopular what I'm about to say, we got to get better at taking the hits, taking the losses, metabolizing it, learning from it, taking the good from the bad, and keep it moving forward. Prisons are chock full of people that were disrespected, sometimes one time. But because that disrespect, sometimes say something about your mother. We got to get better at words. The physical stuff's a different ball game. You're talking about guns and weapons and all. It's a whole other category. But this kid in particular, and a lot of these kids, and the profile of a lot of people that do these types of things, and it's sad. It's sad all the way around. They're getting to the point where they get so vengeful and worked up, and a lot of times they've been severely abused and traumatized, almost always, if not always, that's the case. And that goes back to people in position of leadership, moms, dads, siblings, coaches, teachers, whatever else. And then, you're talking about a lack of accountability at this point. You're talking about a lot of different things, CJ. But ultimately, it goes back to the same bottom line and the story. If everybody focused on, it's not going to happen, on loving themselves first and foremost, loving, not just giving somebody or going for the junk food, and then loving one another. But here's the thing. Here's the bottom line. When people pick on you it's either true or false. When they bully you verbally, it's true or false. If it's true, learn to accept it and work on what you can to improve what you can. And if not, just okay. You know, people get made of that are people call them too short, whatever else. People can't, they don't have any control over that.
Hey, man.
You gotta be kidding me. Like, we're so, we tend to be so mean and rude. And here's the thing, people come from one of two main places when they turn around and be harmful to other folks. They're coming from a place where they're deflated and they feel like they're less than or insignificant or devalued or wrong or bad or guilty or ugly or weak or whatever it is. Or they're coming from a place of arrogance, like, no, I am the dominant one and other people need to, you know, heed my influence and I could do whatever I want to do. And there's a little blend of that, or there's a lot of blend of both of those I see in a lot of these scenarios. And it's just, it's sad and it causes so much fear. You know, your hearts go out all day long as much as you can. I don't know if we're going to do anything. You know, so much focal point is a major distraction. I do think there has to be something to be said about, you know, people that have access to weapons, period, what kind of weapons, etc. But then you get into a whole dicey layer as well, because without weapons, and then if the government, this is a very, very layered thing, and it all boils down to the same thing. We're not loving one another. We're not loving ourselves. That's it. And then, you know, you have your standard based on what the Bible tells you that looks like. And then you're on, I don't care if you're 60, I don't care if you're 100. There's varying levels of potential to abide by that standard, to align to that standard, to apply that standard. And we all fall far short of the optimum of loving one another and loving ourselves. And so I think more investment needs to go on that and less on fighting. I could tell you all day long multiple stories about situations where I want to fight back and I don't like being dictated to. I don't like being, you know, mistreated or whatever else like that. And I have to take it on the chin and I have to absorb it and I have to forgive and I got to metabolize it. And sometimes I have to do it a lot. You know, you were around me during a time frame where I was in a process of, even though I knew better cognitively, I didn't know it truly in my soul, or I had to learn to not project my expectations or my beliefs or my values on other people and let people, not let, but people do what they do. And then I'm the one that has to make the adjustments. And my life far better for it when I operate out of that mindset, but it takes work, it takes sacrifice. And in some ways you lose out. And that's the part that we don't want. We don't like losing. We don't like being inferior. We don't like being weaker than somebody. We don't like being ostracized. And, you know, I don't know enough, and no one probably will, but in this situation with this kid who did that, it could be all of what was stated. And then it could also be just irrational thinking, buying into a lie, being manipulated himself into thinking that this is the way to go through life and that there's something wrong with it, et cetera, et cetera. But it's a combination of a lot of factors and it just stinks. And we're just not very good. We don't have the training, we don't have the education, and we don't want to make the right choices. I don't want to make the right choices. I'll tell you right now, a salad with healthy greens in it sounds about the right thing for dinner. I want pizza. That's a small choice in comparison to all the other ones. But if I can't make those small choices and be disciplined about it, then good luck when I get to the bigger, stronger, more difficult things. And people are dealing with some pretty ridiculous hatred, and it's sad. It's rough out there. So say that to whoever's listening, to yourself, or anybody. Say it to myself, like, we got to get better at learning to accept, adjust, and adapt, and not turn around and get stuck by something, try to avoid something or fight something. Sometimes, a lot of times, the best way to fight is to let go. And, you know, that's very much easier said than done for all of us. We are fighters by nature. We have to.
Amen. Well, sir, why don't you go ahead and share with us before we close this evening? Give us some insight about your upcoming book. Let us know when it's about to be released so we can be ready and prepared to get us a copy when it is going to be available. So share on that with us for a few.
We have the first 150 pages done. So if you're interested in that at no cost, I have no trouble passing that along. It's got one phase. It's got enough introductory stuff. It's some good, real solid information. I've handed it out to about 75 people or so, and everyone's very impressed with it. And they're, these are people I know, so there's a little bit more investment because they know me and want to read. But I think there's enough nutrients in there that you could go a long way. If this conversation or this discussion sparks your interest in some of this stuff, there's a lot of good nuggets in there. And then if you're interested, all of the proceeds are donated through our foundation so that we can provide services to people. We're on the cusp of doing our own podcast, webcast, getting articles out there. We just started up on social media, so Mentors and More on Instagram is a good starting point. You'll have all the requisite information there. You can get to our website, etc. It's less about promotion for me. I'm not big on that, so it's more about just I want people to have access to information that I think is not always out there for our folks.
And let them know again, what is the name of the book?
The name of the book is The Mentor's Training Manual, and you can substitute mentor with anything really: parent, coach, teacher, nanny, anytime you're in a position of influence. You can read it. You will read it, and it'll be. I think. Yep. Coyvel, I appreciate this platform. I appreciate getting an opportunity to talk to folks. I'm hoping that it's a benefit and it's a blessing. And then obviously, if anything that anyone needs along the way, or they have questions or they want to dig deeper, I'm available to do whatever I can. I'm going to be setting up virtual things like this as well, where people can pose questions, and so we can get into some of a little bit more customization for each individual, because those things are quite similar for each of us. There are also very different, and there needs to be a unique set of approach. But your audience is my audience. If they want anything from me, I'm available.
Well, I appreciate that, James, and I appreciate your time. And thank you so much for sharing the information that you have this evening with us. And we will be following you, and we will be putting you on our website and making things available that we know that you are producing, because a lot of what you have is a lot of what I have been feeding off of for years. So I'm looking forward to more and more of what you have to offer to the world. So we want to thank you, man, for being a part of Official CJ Live this evening. We thank you for sharing so much about boundaries, and especially about fight, flight, and frozen. I think that's a huge piece for a lot of people. There's a lot of insight that came out of that. So I really appreciate that. And let's look forward to getting together again soon. I'll be in Cali, man, last week of June to be there for my granddaughter's graduation. So maybe I'll get a chance to, see you if possible. But
yeah, let's make it happen.
But other than that, man, I love you, and I hope to see you soon. Be blessed in all your endeavors, man. And we'll talk when we have the opportunity in the near future. Be blessed.
All right, Coyvel. God bless you.